Trisha's mother-in-law knelt before her and begged her to get pregnant by another man. Trisha and Anthony had been married for 10 years. 10 years of waking up next to each other. 10 years of building a life together. 10 years of love that should have been enough but somehow was not. The problem was simple and devastating: no child. At first, it had not seemed like a problem at all. They were young and newly married and told themselves they had time. But time moved faster than they expected. 1 year became 2, then 3, then 5. Family gatherings became torture sessions where aunties and uncles asked when they would hear good news. Her mother-in-law started making comments about herbs and prayers and traditional healers. Then the comments became sharper. Maybe Trisha was not the right woman for Anthony. Maybe she should step aside and let him find someone who could give him children. Maybe he should take a second wife. Trisha had begged Anthony to go to the hospital with her. She had asked calmly at first, then desperately, then angrily. But Anthony always found an excuse. He was too busy at work. The hospital was too expensive. They should just keep trying naturally. God would provide in his own time. Behind his excuses, Trisha suspected fear. Fear of what they might find. Fear of admitting something might be wrong. So she went alone. The doctors ran tests, they did examinations, they asked questions about her cycle and her health history. And at the end of it all, they told her what she had suspected, deep down. There was nothing wrong with her. Her body was perfectly capable of carrying a child. The relief lasted only a moment before the real question settled in. If she was fine, then what about Anthony? She tried again to get him to go to the hospital. He refused again, this time with more irritation in his voice. She was being paranoid. She was being impatient. She needed to relax and stop stressing about it, because stress was probably the real problem. Trisha lay awake that night, listening to Anthony snore beside her, and made a decision. If he would not go to the hospital willingly, she would take the hospital to him. The opportunity came 3 days later. After they made love, Anthony fell asleep quickly as he always did. Trisha waited until his breathing became deep and steady, then carefully collected what she needed into a small sterile container the doctor had given her. She felt guilty doing it this way, sneaking around like a thief in her own bedroom, but Anthony had left her no choice. The next morning, she drove to the hospital before work and handed over the sample. The lab technician did not ask questions. She simply labeled the container and told Trisha to come back in 3 days. Those 3 days felt like 3 years. Trisha moved through her daily routine like a ghost. She cooked meals and went to work and smiled when appropriate, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. When the call finally came asking her to return for her results, she left work early without explanation. The doctor's face told her everything before he even opened his mouth. Anthony had severe oligospermia. His sperm count was so low that natural conception was essentially impossible. He had been, as they say, shooting blanks, probably for years, possibly his entire life. Trisha sat in her car in the hospital parking lot trying to process what this meant. All those years of blame, all those insinuations that something was wrong with her. All that pressure and shame and judgment, and it had never been her fault at all. The anger came slowly at first, then all at once like a wave crashing over her. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. She wanted to scream. She wanted to drive straight home and throw the test results in Anthony's face. She wanted to call every single person who had ever made her feel inadequate and tell them the truth. Her phone rang. The name on the screen made her stomach clench. Her mother-in-law. Trisha almost did not answer, but some masochistic part of her wanted to hear what fresh criticism the woman had prepared for today. She pressed the answer button and said hello. Her mother-in-law did not bother with pleasantries. She launched immediately into her usual lecture about how Trisha needed to accept that she could not give Anthony a child and step aside so he could find someone who could. She went on about how selfish Trisha was being by holding on to a man she could not give a family. She said that a real woman would know when to let go. Something inside Trisha snapped. Before her mother-in-law could continue, Trisha cut her off. She told her exactly what the doctors had found. She told her that Anthony was the one who could not have children. She told her that she had just come from the hospital with proof that her precious son had been shooting blanks this whole time. She told her that she was going to go home right now and tell Anthony everything, and then she was going to leave him just like his mother had always wanted. Let him find another wife and see how that worked out for him. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Trisha thought the call had dropped. Then her mother-in-law's voice came back, but it sounded different, smaller, desperate. She begged Trisha not to go home yet. She begged her not to tell Anthony. She begged her to come to her house first so they could talk. Trisha refused. She had spent 10 years listening to this woman, and she was done. But her mother-in-law kept begging, kept pleading, kept saying, please, just come, let us talk first. Finally, more out of exhaustion than anything else, Trisha agreed. Her mother-in-law's house was a modest bungalow on the outskirts of town. Trisha had been there countless times for family gatherings and Sunday dinners, but it looked different today, smaller somehow. Less intimidating. Her mother-in-law opened the door before Trisha could knock. The older woman's eyes were red. She had been crying. She ushered Trisha inside and practically pushed her into a chair. Then she knelt down in front of Trisha like a supplicant before a queen. The sight was so shocking that Trisha could not speak. Her mother-in-law, the woman who had made her life miserable for 10 years, was on her knees begging. What she proposed next was even more shocking. Her mother-in-law begged Trisha not to tell Anthony about the test results. She begged Trisha not to leave. Instead, she suggested that Trisha get pregnant by another man, just once. Just to have one child. It could be their secret. No one would ever have to know. Anthony would never have to know. They would take it to their graves. She painted a picture of how happy it would make Anthony, how it would secure their marriage, how it would give them the family they both wanted. She talked about how Anthony was a good man despite this one problem, how he deserved to be a father even if biology had betrayed him, how Trisha deserved to be a mother. Trisha should have been outraged. She should have walked out. But she sat there listening because underneath all the manipulation, there was a grain of truth to what her mother-in-law was saying. Anthony was a good man. He was kind and hardworking, and he loved her. The only real problem in their marriage was the absence of children. And whose fault was that? Not hers, as it turned out. But telling Anthony the truth would destroy him. It would destroy their marriage. It would destroy everything they had built together. Her mother-in-law kept talking, kept pleading, kept painting scenarios until Trisha's resolve began to crumble. Finally, she agreed. God help her, she agreed. Finding a man was easier than she expected. There was a colleague at work who had always been friendly, always respectful, but with an undertone of interest that Trisha had carefully ignored for years. She did not have to ignore it anymore. She did not tell him the real reason. She simply allowed things to develop naturally over a few weeks until the inevitable happened. It felt wrong and right at the same time. Wrong because she was betraying Anthony, right because she was saving their marriage. She told herself that this was for both of them, even if Anthony would never know it. When she saw the positive pregnancy test 6 weeks later, Trisha felt a complicated mix of emotions. Joy because she was finally pregnant, guilt because of how it happened, relief because the nightmare was over. Fear because now she had to live with this secret forever. She told Anthony that evening over dinner. He cried. Actual tears ran down his face as he held her and thanked God and told her how happy she had made him. Trisha cried too, though her tears carried a different weight. Her mother-in-law called an hour later. She did not say much, just congratulations and thank you, and we will never speak of this again. They never did. The pregnancy progressed normally. Anthony was attentive and excited in ways Trisha had never seen before. He read parenting books, he painted the nursery, he talked to her belly every night. His joy was genuine and infectious, and Trisha found herself almost forgetting how the baby had been conceived. Almost. The guilt never fully went away, but it became easier to live with. When their son was born, Anthony held him like he was holding the entire world. He named him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Trisha thought the name was fitting in ways Anthony could never understand. The first year of Emmanuel's life was the happiest year of their marriage. Anthony was a devoted father. He woke up for night feedings. He changed diapers without complaint. He took Emmanuel everywhere and showed him off to anyone who would look. Trisha watched her husband fall in love with their son and told herself that she had made the right choice. The secret was worth it if it brought this much joy. Her mother-in-law visited often and doted on her grandson, and she and Trisha maintained a silent understanding. They had conspired together, and now they would protect that conspiracy together. But secrets have a way of coming to light. It started with small comments from Anthony's friends. They would look at Emmanuel and tilt their heads and say things like, "He must take after your wife's side because he does not look anything like you." Anthony would laugh it off at first. Babies change all the time. Give it time. But Emmanuel did not change. He grew into a toddler who looked nothing like Anthony or anyone in Anthony's family. The comments became more frequent, more pointed. Anthony started noticing the differences himself. The shape of Emmanuel's face, the texture of his hair, the color of his skin that was just slightly different from both Anthony and Trisha. Then social media exploded with stories about DNA tests. Everywhere Anthony looked, there were posts about men discovering that their children were not biologically theirs. His friends joked about it. They sent memes in their group chats. They said things like, "You should get your kid tested just to be sure." At first, Anthony dismissed it. He trusted Trisha, but doubt is a seed that grows quickly once planted. He started looking at Emmanuel differently. He started looking at Trisha differently. He started seeing evidence everywhere, whether it existed or not. Finally, he made an appointment at a private lab without telling anyone. Anthony sat in his car outside the lab reading the DNA result over and over again. 0% probability of paternity. The child he had loved for over a year, the child he had named and raised and cherished, was not his son. The betrayal felt physical. His chest hurt. His hands shook. He drove home on autopilot and walked into the house like a man in a trance. Trisha was in the kitchen preparing dinner with Emmanuel playing on the floor nearby. She looked up and smiled when Anthony came in, but her smile died when she saw his face. He did not ask questions. He did not give her a chance to explain. He simply held up the DNA results and said one word, "Out." Then he started grabbing her things. Clothes from the closet, toiletries from the bathroom, shoes from the rack. He threw everything into suitcases and garbage bags while Trisha followed him crying and begging and trying to explain. He would not listen. He could not listen. The roaring in his ears was too loud. When he had gathered everything he could find, he threw it all outside and told her to leave. She refused. She fell to her knees. She clung to his legs. She called her mother-in-law. His mother arrived within 20 minutes. She rushed in and tried to calm Anthony down, tried to get him to listen, tried to get him to be reasonable. Anthony turned on her with fury he did not know he possessed. He told her she should be on his side. He told her she should be as angry as he was. He told her that her daughter-in-law had betrayed him in the worst possible way and she was taking Trisha's side. His mother tried to speak, but Anthony was beyond hearing. He put Trisha's bags on the porch and told her if she did not leave, he would call the police. Trisha left. She gathered her bags and picked up Emmanuel and walked to her car while neighbors watched from their windows. She drove to her mother's house because she had nowhere else to go. Anthony spent the next 3 days in a rage. He broke things. He drank too much. He ignored calls from everyone. His mother tried to visit and he would not let her in. Finally, on the 4th day, his mother let herself in with a spare key he had given her years ago. She found him sitting in Emmanuel's nursery holding one of the baby's toys. She sat down on the floor next to him and told him everything. She told him about the hospital visit. She told him about the test results. She told him about the conversation in her house. She told him about her plan and how she had convinced Trisha to go through with it. She told him the whole terrible truth. Anthony listened in silence. When she finished, he asked her why. Why would she do this to him? Why would she let him live a lie? His mother looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "Because you deserved to be a father. Because I watched you suffer for 10 years thinking you could not have children. Because I knew the truth would destroy you. Because I thought this was the kinder option." Anthony wanted to be angry. He wanted to rage at her like he had raged at Trisha, but all he felt was tired. Tired and sad and lost. He thought about everything his mother had said. He thought about the test results. He thought about his own inability to have biological children. He thought about Emmanuel. He thought about how much he loved that little boy. Biology did not change that. DNA did not change the year he had spent being Emmanuel's father. Yes, Trisha had betrayed him. Yes, his mother had conspired against him. But they had done it for him, in their own misguided way. They had done it so he could have what he wanted most in the world, a family. It took him 2 more weeks to work up the courage to call Trisha. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was hoarse like she had been crying. He asked where she was. She told him she was at her mother's house. He asked if he could come see her. She said yes. He drove there that afternoon. When he saw her holding Emmanuel on her hip, something inside him broke and healed at the same time. He apologized. She apologized. They held each other and cried while Emmanuel babbled between them, oblivious to the pain his existence had caused. They did not go back to normal immediately. They went to counseling. They had hard conversations about trust and honesty and what it meant to be a family. But slowly, carefully, they rebuilt their marriage. Anthony looked at Emmanuel and realized that biology did not define fatherhood. He had been there for every milestone, every late. Trisha carried the weight of her secret differently now that Anthony knew. The guilt was still there, but it no longer suffocated her. Anthony's mother visited often, and they all maintained an unspoken agreement. What had happened would stay between them forever. Some secrets were meant to protect the people you loved. Emmanuel grew up surrounded by parents who adored him and a grandmother who spoiled him. He never knew the storm that had preceded his birth or the pain his existence had once caused. He was simply loved. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They were a family, imperfect and complicated and scarred, but together